Switzerland. A lot will say this is the most neutral country on earth and even the safest country if World War III ever begins, with a good reason. Switzerland today is also pretty rich and a haven for rich people and chocolate lovers. But also, Switzerland also has neighbors that historically clash with each other for dominance. Before that, let us look into its country's profile, shall we? Switzerland is a landlocked, mountainous country in south-central Europe. It is only slightly smaller than the Netherlands, or slightly less than twice the size of the US state of New Jersey. Switzerland has a population of 8.3 million people in 2015. The capital city is Bern. The largest city is Zurich. Spoken languages are German, French, Italian, and Romansh, traditionally spoken in different regions or cantons of the country. Geographically speaking, the country is divided between the Alpine region, the Swiss Alps in the south, the Swiss Plateau in the rolling hills, plains, and large lakes, and the mountainous Jura in the northwest. Swiss geography will dictate the history of this country up to today. Today, Switzerland is a federal state in Central Europe. Let's talk about its neighbors. It is bordered by Germany to the north, Austria, and also, don't forget, little Liechtenstein to the east, Italy to the south, and France to the west. Knowing the neighbors of Switzerland is important because in Switzerland, the demographics and language spoken correspond to its closest neighbors in each area. For example, people living in regions closest to France are more likely to speak French, and people living closer to Austrian or German border are also more likely to speak German, and also in Italy. Let's go into it, shall we? It is no surprise that Germany and Switzerland are very close neighbors. German is a majority language of the entire country, spoken by around 62.6%. Culturally, the Swiss are the closest to the German state of Baden-Württemberg. The Alemannic dialects in that state are also the closest to Swiss German. Economically, ties are always close. Germany is Switzerland's most important trading partner. A third of all imports to Switzerland come from Germany. Historically, Switzerland is part of the Holy Roman Empire, but within itself it would gradually grow by adding more cantons over time. In 1648, the Treaty of Westphalia granted Switzerland its independence from the Holy Roman Empire and recognized Swiss neutrality for the first time. Internal issues between the cantons still caused problems but would later be resolved around the 19th century. Switzerland began opening relations to Berlin in 1867. Switzerland, as what you expect, was neutral during World War I and World War II. However, during World War I, the Germans actually planned to use Switzerland to outflank French fortifications, but Belgium was used instead because, well, flat geography and easier troop movement through Belgium instead of Switzerland. During World War II, Germany really hated the Swiss acting as a thorn because of neutrality, hence they planned an invasion called Operation Tannenbaum. But because of Swiss geography, the Swiss national redoubt, which essentially makes Switzerland too expensive for any invader to accept, and the realization that the USSR is much more important to invade ideologically, it never happened. Switzerland then opened up relations with West and East Germany and further strengthened the relations after reunification. Today, they are close, rich nations cooperating a lot with each other. Austria is a very close friend of Switzerland. Both countries are dominantly German-speaking, share their Alpine mountains, and also both enjoy good bilateral relations. They had diplomatic relations since the Middle Ages. Also, fun fact, the Habsburgs, who ruled Austria for more than 6 centuries, are originally from Aargau, Switzerland. Later, the House of Habsburg in Austria would later be rivals with the Old Swiss Confederacy, a precursor to modern Switzerland, in which the Habsburgs sought to expand their influence in the area and incorporate it to their kingdom. As a result, conflicts arose between the Habsburgs and these mountain communities who tried to defend their privileged status as Reichsfrei regions. The Confederation would successfully keep the Habsburgs in check and even expand their territory up to today's borders. Later in its history, Austria and Switzerland would later establish closer relations, fighting off the French during the Napoleonic years. During World War I, Austrian and Italian campaigns did not touch Swiss territory that much, mainly because Swiss Alps is much harder to pass. And during the Cold War, both Switzerland and Austria were neutral, even though Austria is pursuing a much pro-Western diplomatic approach. But today, both countries cooperate well diplomatically, especially in economy, research, and education. We cannot complete Switzerland's neighbors without adding little Liechtenstein to the list. Liechtenstein is also part of the Holy Roman Empire like Switzerland, but it is also part of the German Confederation until independence in 1866. Liechtenstein did not join Switzerland, nor Austria, nor the German Empire, but diplomatic relations began to develop since these three countries have recognized its independence. In 1919, Liechtenstein turned to Switzerland for pool protection and cooperation. Liechtenstein has used the Swiss franc since 1920. The two countries have formed a customs union since 1924 and both have open borders. Switzerland is empowered to enter into treaties on Liechtenstein's behalf if Liechtenstein is not represented at the treaty negotiations. And also, Switzerland represents Liechtenstein abroad unless they choose otherwise. Both countries share so much in common. Both are predominantly German-speaking, not part of the EU, share the common currency, and pursue the policy of neutrality. Also, Liechtenstein relies on Switzerland for defense, since it doesn't have an army on its own. However, since Swiss has an active military, some invasion mistakes do happen sometimes. So basically, Switzerland is a big brother to Liechtenstein with a lot in common, and that shall continue in the future. South of Switzerland is Italy, sharing a really long border with it. Italian is also an official language in Switzerland, spoken mainly near the border. Both shared a long history, dating back in the Roman Empire, when much of Switzerland used to be part of it. During the Italian Wars, the Swiss incorporated all of Ticino, predominantly inhabited by Italians. Today, both countries have close relations, being the second largest trading partner. Switzerland is also a very popular destination of Italian immigrants, in which, at one point, half of its total number of foreigners were Italian. There are also more Swiss schools in Italy than anywhere else. Also, I would like to mention an Italian exclave surrounded by Switzerland, Campione d'Italia. This exclave is indeed part of Italy, but mostly under Swiss customs, until this year when it formally became part of the EU customs union. Prior to that, it was exempt from the value-added tax and enjoyed its integration with the Swiss customs. Many services are all provided by the Swiss, but also by Italy at the same time. It is well known for Europe's oldest and largest casino, Casino di Campione, which is sadly closed today, which provided a lifeline to much of the municipality's economy. Switzerland's final neighbor is France, located westward. Much of the western portions of Switzerland are historically inhabited by mostly Catholic, French-speaking population. All of Switzerland later became part of Charlemagne's empire. Frankish kingdom, which is really huge. Fast forward to 1516, France and Switzerland signed a treaty of perpetual peace, Paix Perpetuelle in French. On 1798, Napoleon invaded Switzerland, in which the French supported the pro-French Revolution, which later established the Helvetic Republic. Napoleon later abolished the Republic and issued the Act of Mediation, which would partially restore the sovereignty of the cantons but would become a client state of the French Empire. It lasted until 1815. France afterwards would establish close relations with Switzerland, in which 194,000 Swiss nationals live in France, the largest Swiss community outside Switzerland. And that is also the same case with France, with around 163,000 French people living in Switzerland. France is Switzerland's third largest trading partner after Germany and Italy, and the two are integrated economically even though Switzerland is not part of the EU. And finally, Switzerland is a country with diverse population and a complicated history. But thanks to geography and neutrality, it managed to thrive in the Alps and became one of the happiest countries in the world. It's a no shock that this country might even be one of the safest places if World War II to ever begin. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also check my full video if you haven't yet.